I see that title on the screen, Perfect Father, and I want to laugh, but it hurts too much to move my face. If you ask people 60 years ago, they'd tell you I was the gold standard. I provided. I set boundaries. I demanded respect. My children, Clara and Elias, they never went without anything. They were structured. They followed the rules. I thought that was the job of a man, of a parent. I mastered the job. I truly believe that. But here I sit now, 80 years old, in this quiet house, and I realize I won an argument, but I lost a relationship. That rule book I lived by, it was the most expensive thing I ever owned. When you're young, you confuse control with love. You mistake compliance for genuine connection. I measured my success by their report cards and how tidy their rooms were. I used to brag about my system. I had charts, deadlines, punishments that were always fair but never compassionate. I didn't want them to fail in life, you see. I grew up poor, and I needed them to climb. Every decision I made was about optimization, about making them better, sharper, tougher. The idea of just sitting and wasting time, maybe cracking jokes, or letting them see me cry, that felt like weakness. That felt like poor parenting. That wasn't in the manual. Decades ago, fathers were expected to be the law. You were the structure, not the shoulder. I read every book, every psychological guide on childhood development. If Clara missed her curfew by 1 minute, there was a documented consequence. If Elias scored a B-, we analyzed where he failed. I wasn't yelling. I was just cold. I was implementing policy. I confused discipline with intimacy. I remember my neighbor, old Mr. Hemlock, who joked and wrestled with his kids, and I privately judged him. I thought he was a lightweight, setting his boys up for failure because he was too soft. I was so arrogant about my method, and it was all based on fear. My fear that they wouldn't succeed without my rigid guidance. Clara, she was such a sensitive girl. She thrived on praise, but I only gave praise when she exceeded expectations. I thought if I complimented her too easily, she would become complacent. I remember once, she stayed up late making me a birdhouse for Father's Day. It was slightly lopsided, poorly painted. I immediately pointed out that the measurements weren't precise enough and that wood glue was not strong enough for outdoor use. She just stood there holding it. I was so obsessed with being a good teacher that I completely failed as a recipient of her love. That memory is crystal clear, and it still burns. Elias was always the rebel, testing the boundaries, but I never let him test them too far. Once, when he was 17, he got caught skipping a history class. Instead of asking him why he did it, I grounded him for 3 months and made him write a 5,000-word essay on responsibility. I watched him write it, hunched over his desk, his face a mask of resentment. The problem is, I never learned the why. I didn't learn that he was struggling with anxiety and felt inadequate in that class. I only saw the broken rule. I enforced the sentence. I didn't offer a lifeline. I offered a rule book. He learned to hide his struggles instead of trusting me with them. The turning point came when they finally left home. You think that empty nest feeling is sad because you miss the noise, but for me it was terrifying because the structure collapsed. When they were under my roof, I had purpose. I was managing them. Once they were gone, I had no framework for interaction. Our calls weren't conversations, they were status reports. Elias would say, I got the promotion, and I'd say, "Good, keep climbing." Clara would tell me about her mortgage, and I'd analyze the interest rate. There was never any filler, no idle talk, no vulnerability. It suddenly hit me. I raised two very successful strangers. It was their mother, my sweet Tia, who saw it first. She passed 5 years ago. I remember her telling me, "Matthew, they respect you entirely, but they don't know how to relax around you." I dismissed it. I said, "Respect is what matters. Relaxation is for when they retire." Oh, the folly of youth, even my youth in my 50s. When Thea got sick, she drew them close, taught them how to be soft again. She was their anchor of warmth. When she left, that warmth went with her, and all that was left between me and my children was the architecture of discipline. There was no comfortable silence left, only awkward formality. It's hard to explain what silence sounds like when you're 80. My children call. They always call on Sundays. They send flowers on holidays. They ask if I need anything fixed. They are dutiful. That's the exact word, dutiful. They learned that from me. They learned how to check a required box. But when I try to talk about something real, something vulnerable, like how lonely this chair feels after Thea passed, or my fear of the future, the line gets tight. There's a pause. They don't know how to respond to Matthew the man, only Matthew the authority. They were never trained for friendship with me. I often think about the wasted time. All those hours I spent correcting behavior instead of creating memories. I look at those pictures over there, the ones from the family trip to the coast. I remember the entire drive I was correcting Elias's posture and Clara's singing volume. I don't remember the sunset. My mind was stuck on optimizing the experience, not experiencing it. We skip the chapter where we learn how to laugh together, where we complain about things that don't matter, where they trust me with their failures. I was so afraid of raising lazy children that I raised children who were afraid of me. They love me, I know they do, but they don't like me very much. There is a huge difference, especially when you reach this age. Respect gets you clean gutters. Liking gets you spontaneous visits just to share a cup of coffee. Liking gets you the unguarded conversation late at night. I need the coffee and the unguarded conversation now more than I need the clean gutters, but I structured our relationship to only receive the duty. This is the consequence of perfect parenting. When the child grows up, the perfect parent has nothing left to offer except the wisdom of his own loneliness. If you take one thing from an old man who doesn't have much time left, let it be this: your rules should serve the relationship, not the other way around. Lower the fence. Let them scrape their knees. Let them see your flawed humanity. Don't just be the treasurer of their success. Be the curator of their joy. You have to earn their friendship while you still have the authority to demand their obedience. Because one day, the obedience will fade when they move out, but the friendship is what brings them back, years later, to genuinely check on your heart. It's what makes those Sunday calls meaningful, not mandatory. I'm not saying don't teach discipline. Structure is good. But if you have to choose between being respected 100% of the time and being loved comfortably 100% of the time, choose comfort. Choose the laughter. Choose the messy birdhouse. It's too late for me to fix 40 years of formality. I can only sit here, hoping that perhaps one afternoon Elias will forget the rules, bring his own son over, and just share something dumb that happened at work. That is the true gold standard of parenting. Don't be perfect. Be present.